Hi, this is Sapphire Opal 5, or Sapphi, whichever you prefer. Um, Thank you for watching this video. Today, the experience I want to share with you, very fascinating, is my astral trip to the Pleiades star system. Um, One night, a couple months ago, back in towards the end of June or so, I went to bed, just like I would any other night, and um, after I closed my eyes, little bit, little bit after I started to fall asleep or whatever, I see this bright white light, and then as the light fades away, I find myself in this really beautiful place. It reminded me of the Arctic region during the summertime. I don't know if this was in Alaska or where the heck this place was, but it had a very edge of the world kind of feeling, like I'm literally on the edge of the world. And as I'm looking around, I see a odd looking box like thing. It's really hard to explain. It looks very flexible looking, sort of rubbery looking, but it was shaped like like a big rectangular box, and attached to it was a large red flower. This is very interesting. And I see this really short man who just is sitting by this box, and I see this weird looking machine or something where he's sitting by. And I approach the man, and he asks me, "Where would you like to go today?" And my higher self apparently decided that I have been wanting to go to this place. And I told them I want to go somewhere in the Pleiades star cluster. And for some reason, the word Maya popped into my head, and I didn't consciously choose this. I don't think that the Pleiades was my first choice. I would have for me personally, I would have chosen the Sirius star system or Arcturus, as I have some strong ties to those systems. Anyways, and as I thought of the word Maya, I also started to get a series of images of like the Pleiades star cluster and of this planet with a purple lavender sky with 3 moons. I thought this is pretty interesting. I don't think I've ever been to a place like this before, but maybe I have and I don't really recall too well. But I might have been there once or twice, but the memory of that is very vague. So the man instructs me to go inside of this box, as I'm going to call it. And as I went inside of this box, the walls just started to fold around me, around my every curve, and it felt very weird. It almost had like a slimy, smooth texture to it, the inside, and it was a very tight fit. And so as I am inside of this box, this man tells me that I cannot get to this place using my physical body because my body will not adapt well to this planet's atmosphere, and the gravity there is very different. And for my personal safety, it is best if I stay here. My physical body, that is, and I go there via astral projection. And I'm thinking, okay, well, this is very interesting. If this were to be a dream, then I don't think that I would be inside of this box and this man telling me that I need to be in this box so that, my body doesn't get hurt or whatever the heck would happen should I go there with my physical body. So he tells me that I will be getting there via astral projection, and this box is going to be protecting my body while my astral body is there on this particular planet. And he tells me to close my eyes. I close my eyes, and a moment later, I start to see lights start to show. It's like a cyan blue white light. And it starts to get brighter and brighter, and as the light is getting brighter and brighter, I find myself viewing this in third person. Like, I'm seeing the box and the flower and the stream of light pointing towards the sky. And I realized that I am no longer my physical body. This is my astral body that I am in. And I find myself floating and everything. And I start to fly towards this stream of light, and as I enter the stream of light, I find myself spinning at an incredible rate, just flying through. And I see that, and I see and it's like a light tunnel. Everything's just spinning and spinning at a very fast rate, and I'm starting to see like stars and planets and all this other interesting stuff as I'm flying through. So eventually, the tunnel of spinning light and the stars and the planets, all of that starts to fade away, and I find myself landing on this grass-like material. And it was a smooth landing. I didn't feel any kind of shock or anything. It was a pretty gradual landing, I would say. And I look up and I see that the sky is a lavender purple color. And it appears that it's around like sunset time, not quite dark, but it's certainly approaching dark time, nighttime. And I look up at the sky and I see that there are two moons that are in a waxing crescent phase, as we would call it, and one of the moons is in a new moon phase. And I realize to myself that I have arrived at my destination. I am on a different planet that I believe is in the Pleiades star cluster. And I think to myself, all right, this is pretty interesting. The place I'm seeing right now is just like in the images that I was being shown before I left. And I start to walk, and as I'm walking through this grass-like substance material, I see that there are fireflies. Only the fireflies here are not green like we would generally see here on Earth. Instead, the fireflies were, they were very like purple and blue and even pink. And they almost looked very glittery rather than just a glow. It was more like glitters, and I thought to myself, wow, these bugs are gorgeous, and how they light up and everything. And I'm walking, and I find myself approaching the city. The weather's pretty warm here. I mean, it's kind of like springtime in North America. Tad bit on the warmer side. Breeze is pretty warm, but it's not humid. It's pretty mild weather here. Anyways, so I approach the city and I see these gorgeous buildings that are like a golden tan color, and they seem to be made of like marble or some kind of stone. Pretty amazing. They have a very funky architecture, as you can see in the rather poor quality drawings that I have here in this video. They had a very funky dome-like shape to the design. It's only remotely as what is being seen here in this drawing. There's like these funky panels on the roof, and the roof is almost like a glass material, and I noticed that on these buildings that there are these giant windows, and the windows are a very dark, almost smoky quartz-like color. And in these windows, there are literally like millions of tiny little blue lights just moving around in them. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is nothing I've ever seen here on Earth. I mean, there's some images that you can find on like interior design websites that have something sort of similar, but nothing quite like this. And I see that these buildings are actually floating above the water, which was really interesting to see. And I see that there's like a fence surrounding these buildings that are also made of this glass-like substance. And they also have these little lights running through them, only that these lights are more white and pink and orange and all kinds of different colors. The glass is not nearly as dark as the windows per se, but still a little bit of a dark tint to them. And I noticed that to one of the buildings there was a bridge. If you've ever seen the movie Thor, you will see that there's a rainbow bridge that leads to the Stargater, whatever it is you want to call that. This bridge was not quite like that. It didn't look as quartzy or anything. It looked more like glass again. But it was pretty rainbowy looking, and the lights were more glittery and glitzy, just like you would see in the windows and the glass of the fence that surrounded these buildings. And on the roof, I saw that there were many little crystal orb-like lights surrounding the perimeter of the roof. And also these same little orbs were on the poles of the fence. And it seemed as though these blue orb lights served as the city lights. And I'm thinking to myself that whoever lives in this city, they seem to not need as much light as humans here on Earth do. And so I approached the building I crossed this bridge, and I approached the building that this bridge leads to. And I'm walking through this building, and it's really dark. And it seems like the interior walls are made mostly of the same substance as the windows are. It's very dark. The same blue lights are running through these walls. And as I'm walking through this hallway, this really long hallway, I have a link to an image in this video that you can go and check out. Due to copyright stuff, I can't really portray it in this video. But if you like to have a pretty good idea of what this hallway looked like, I highly encourage you to go to this link. No, and I think that the artist deserves some due credit and also more traffic to his website. Anyways, so I'm walking through this hallway, and I see off to the right somewhere that there's a room that has golden light. And I find myself approaching this room towards the end of this hallway, this part of the hallway anyways, and I'm walking towards this room, and I'm thinking, and as I get close to this, and I'm approaching this room, and as I get to this room, I see that there is a large circle table. Now, the table I was looking at was rather large. You could fit around 12, 15 people around this table, perhaps. There were no chairs, which I found to be rather odd. And I noticed in the center of the table was a medallion design. And the design appeared to be much like the Pleiades star cluster, as you can see the image of the table below. I'm going to compare it to how we would see the Pleiades from here on Earth, just so you get the gist of what this table looked like and how it compares to the Pleiades star cluster. And I noticed on the outer rim of this table, it was black, and there were a bunch of symbols around it in gold. inscribed in this out of front of the table in gold. And my higher self says, oh, well, those are Atlantean and Mayan symbols. How I came to that conclusion, I could not tell you. I was very baffled and found myself surprised at saying this because I've might have seen like images of like Atlantean, some so-called Atlantean symbols, and maybe some Mayan once a long time ago in a movie or something, but other than that, I was not familiar with those so-called languages of ancient times. And the symbols that are seen in this drawing don't match what I've seen, but it's the closest I could remember as best as I could, and the symbols were a lot smaller, but I exploded them just so you can get a general idea of what I saw. So I looked around the room, and I see that the walls, except for one of the walls, were made of the same marble stone-like material as the exterior of the buildings, but different. And there was a light above the table, and it was pretty large. It seemed to mimic natural sunlight, and this is what was giving off that golden light that I was seeing when I was still in that dark hallway. And there doesn't seem to be a door to this room, which was rather odd, at least that I couldn't tell anyways. And on one of the walls is again that same material with the glass-like material with these little microscopic blue lights running through it, just moving around. And I noticed that there are other humanoid extraterrestrials walking into this room. I can't remember what everybody looked like. There are a couple individuals that stood out. Although I do remember that all these extraterrestrials were in fact hologram-like, and everyone looked like they were in their 30s. And everyone was like glowy looking. And the one individual who stood out, one odd-looking character, he had tannish skin. He had a maroon suit on. It was like a dark maroon, and he had like flaps around his neck. And he was a little bit on the heavy side, and his appearance was like really odd. I can almost say he looked like a combination of like a frog and a walrus. I don't know. This is really the best way I can explain it. Anyways, and he was kind of short. Couldn't be anything above 5 foot. Between 4 and 5 feet tall. And I also noticed a beautiful man. He had pale skin, blonde hair, and these really weird light eyes. They were like a bluish purple gray color. But this man, he was wearing like a blue suit, and if he were walking here on Earth, maybe with sunglasses, maybe not, and he were in, say, Sweden or Norway or somewhere in the northern European region, he could walk down the street and you wouldn't know that he wasn't from Earth. Very interesting and quite fascinating if you ask me. But he was the only individual who didn't look hologram-like. He didn't look at all transparent like everyone else did. And that suggests to me that he was native to this planet and that he actually lived in this city. And so, as all these extraterrestrials arrived, we were all standing around this table, and the tan individual with the maroon suit, he approached the wall with the glass material, and it was weird because like a computer started to pop up, and he started to type something in, and this giant panel just pulls out of the wall. And I'm just blown away because it seems as though this was their computer system. It was just like the panel was just like the walls, the glass walls in the windows, and I'm thinking to myself, maybe that the windows in all the hallways are is in fact their computer system. And it was all like an electronic library. It was really interesting. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe that these little lights are in fact like little robots or something that contain the data. I have no idea. Um, and as this panel pulls out of the wall, um, I also see that he pulls out this drawer, and he pulls out a scroll. It was really weird. Like the scroll was like all electronic looking, and it was sort of like the futuristic computers you might see in, say, the Avengers or something, all rolled up, and it was very fascinating, and it seemed as though the images seen on the scroll could change, and he pulls the scroll out. It seemed like the scroll was downloading a certain data or something while he was standing there waiting for it to be quote quote ready. And he pulls it out, unrolls it, and he puts it onto the table. And unfortunately, I do not remember much of what this conversation was about. All I remember are certain images and what I said at the end of the meeting to conclude. The images seen on the scroll, I started to see our star system and even our planets, which was really interesting. And I remember at one point on the scroll, I saw another star system and another planet. And I don't think it was this particular planet that I was on, but it seems to me as though it seems somehow close by. And the reason why I say this is because, it seems like all the information for these blueprints and plans or whatever were stored on this planet. And I started to get to this conclusion that this place I was at was kind of like, it had like a Washington, D.C. sort of vibe to it. And I say that because it was like a place where like people from all around the world would meet in the country, although this would be more like a star nation, so to speak, rather than a country like here on Earth. And I'm looking at these blueprints with these extraterrestrials, and the images are changing. People were pointing at it, and it was really interesting. I can't remember what everyone said. I remember at the end of the meeting, I eventually kind of pounded the table, and I said, "So we have come to a consensus about things. Yes? Wouldn't you say that we have come to this conclusion? Yes?" And everyone else nodded in agreement. And in that same individual with the maroon suit and the tan skin color, he rolled up the scroll and he put it back in and started typing in everything, and the panel goes back into the wall, and everyone starts to leave this room, and I'm going back through this hallway, and I realized to myself something major happened, and that this decision has been needing to be made for some time, and maybe that's why I was rushed, and instead of going onto a ship per se and arriving at this building just to visit or whatever, maybe the reason why I went there via astral projection or whatever, not just to keep my body safe, but possibly because something needed to be done and a decision had to be made right then and there. What that decision is, I'm not sure. I feel like it has something to do with the future of mankind based on the images I remember, and just a sense of urgency that my higher self had needed to go to this place. And so I eventually approached the where I was before, and eventually I just walked up to where I was, and I found myself standing on this circle stone with all these weird symbols just like seen on the table. And I realized to myself, I'm standing on a Stargate. And so eventually, when I was thinking of going home, I eventually start to notice that there's like a series of tablets, of circle tablets sitting on one another, and then I noticed that the tablets start to spin around, and it seems like they have to line up in a certain way, and the symbols started to glow a cyan blue color, and they started to glow, which was really interesting. Um, and it seems that these tablets are aligning themselves in a specific way, and as they are lined up, I see that same blue, cyan blue, white light start to show, and I am going through this light, and everything is spinning again. I'm seeing the planets and stars floating by me while I'm in the spinning tunnel of light, and eventually, as I reached the end of this light, everything's just started to turn white. I see that same bright white light, and I find myself going through Los Angeles, and I land on this really weird looking car, and I'm driving through the city, and I noticed the roads were starting to turn pink behind me, which was really weird. And I was driving on a highway system, and everything else on this car that was driving by itself. Why that is, I couldn't tell you. But eventually, I started to see white light as the end of the dream approached, and eventually, I find myself waking up. I woke up the next morning. I found myself very curious, as for starters, as to whether or not Maya is a star rather, in the Pleiades star cluster. And of course, it is in fact one of the stars in the Pleiades star cluster. And I thought to myself, oh wow, that's pretty interesting. I mean, I have heard of the Pleiades before. I'm a fan of astronomy, but I wasn't sure of all the star names in the Pleiades star cluster. Well, at least the main stars that we are aware of. And one of the ones that are involved in many versions of mythology around the world in different parts of the world. And I also decided to check up on the connection between the Mayans and the Pleiades star system. And as it turns out, that the Mayans did in fact place a lot of importance on this particular star cluster, and some of their calendars revolved around our orbiting this system, or whatever it is they thought the connection between our system and the Pleiades was. And apparently in the Popol Vuh or something, Popol Vuh, it's a Mayan religious book, I believe, and there is a story about 400 boys who were building a house, and they decided to ask this man who claimed that he could move mountains. And this man, God, he was able to carry this log by himself with no trouble. And these boys decided that this man, this God, or whoever he was no good, because no one should be able to carry such a big log by themselves. And they decided to try killing him. They tried to trick him while he was digging this hole. And they were going to have this log collapse on him. And of course, this God was clever enough to think that I should build a hole in the side, because he knew what they were up to. And as they decided to try crushing him while he was digging this hole, he went into this side hole that he created, and he made a very loud noise as the log hit the ground, and he wanted them to think that he died, so he made this really loud yell, and the boys were all excited, thinking, oh, we killed him, yay, and, you know, they continued to build their hut, and eventually the hut was built, and they were celebrating, and they were drinking a lot. These 400 boys, by the way, were the gods of alcohol, in the Popol Vuh. And so while they were celebrating, the god, I can't remember his name at this moment, he decided to have the hut crash down on them while they were celebrating. And as the roof collapsed on all 400 of them, not a single one of these boys survived. And eventually these two twin boys, who are said to be heroes, in Mayan mythology, they decided to get revenge for these 400 boys, and so eventually they decided to kill him by turning him into concrete or something like that, and they turned the 400 boys into the stars that consist of the Pleiades star system. Now, on a very interesting note, there are said to be about 250 to 500 stars that are currently known in the Pleiades star cluster, and while the number 400 is between 250 and 500. I thought that was very fascinating and a very extraordinary connection there that the Mayans may or may not have made. Whether that's a coincidence or if they had some knowledge of this, I couldn't tell you. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I also find it curious how the name Maya and how we refer to this ancient civilization as the Mayans. Whether there's a connection between this particular star and this civilization, I'm not really sure. But I'm thinking it's entirely possible, and I believe that there is, based on what I had seen and what I've been reading and everything else. So that's that for the research part, and I've run a lot of contactee trips to the Pleiades. I've heard of different stories with contactees and everything else, and I even watched a video made by a woman who calls herself Arcturian Star here online, and I watched her contactee trip to the Pleiades as well. In fact, for some reason, for a few weeks before this trip happened, I had seen, these videos around, but I never took the time to watch them. And eventually, after this trip of mine, I decided to watch these videos, and now I realize why my higher self, my subconscious or whatever, was telling me that I should watch these videos, and that they're somehow connected to me. And, of course, I watched the video, and now I see why I was wanting to see these videos for some time, but just never did. And after this trip, I also started to read a lot of, before I had this experience, I also heard of a lot of starseeds who are said to be from the Pleiades, talk about this planet with this purple lavender sky and the 3 moons. And I did find myself being curious about where this planet was in the Pleiades system, should this planet exist. And I found myself again curious about this planet for a few weeks beforehand, this experience, and perhaps I had been wondering about this video of Arcturian stars and where this planet was, and reading about all these Pleiadian starseeds talk about it. Like, maybe the reason why I was wondering it is because I, in fact, have been needing to go there for some time now, and my higher self was aware of this. So I found that a very interesting connection, very fascinating. I also remember Arcturian Star mentioning the movie Knowing. I happen to have liked this movie. Some people made fun of the ending. Um, and I remember there's actually a reference made in the movie Knowing up to the Pleiades star system. They noticed like a flash or something occur somewhere outside of the Pleiades star cluster region. And while, as if you've seen the movie, we see that these children are taken in these ships to another planet. And it seems that they're taken in pairs so that, again, that they could perhaps reproduce and start a new life on this other planet. So I think that's kind of a creepy connection there. And I also started to think to myself, I've heard of these stories about supposed alien contactees talk about seeing these bodies that are aged in their 30s. Even the children look like they're in their 30s. Like just being stored, and what those bodies are about. Like who really knows? But I started to think about how all these stories talking about these bodies being stored, and then all these contactees talking about seeing all these alien worlds, and I made the connection between my experience and what all these people are saying, what other contactees have seen and been told based on their trips to the Pleiades, or what they have been told by Pleiadians. And I'm starting to think that maybe there really is an off-world colony being made, and there are in fact some people being shown these alien worlds. And I think that maybe that my trip to the Pleiades has something to do with a possible off-world settlement on a different planet, and maybe the Pleiadians are in fact in charge of this project. Again, what all this is about, I don't know 100%. Nobody really does. Maybe the reason why so many people are being shown is that maybe we're supposed to collaborate or something. If anyone who's watching this video knows anything more, please say something in the comments or something. I think that there's something big going on here, and if we collaborate together and we share notes, exchange notes, so to speak, that we can figure this out together. You can take what I have said here, take it or leave it. Again, thank you for watching this video. I'm aware that this is a very controversial subject, and I might get a lot of flack for what I have to say here, but it is what it is, and I really do hope that you enjoyed what I had to say one way or another, and I hope that this helps enlighten you about your own experiences, or what you've read or heard or whatever, one way or another. And yeah, so thank you for watching this again. I hope that this enlightens you one way or another, or it was at least of good entertainment to you if you think I'm crazy or something. And you have a good day. Alright, bye.